Harley and the Davidsons is the ultimate story of the American dream. It's the story of blue-collar guys who have a dream and who refuse to give up on that dream no matter how insurmountable the obstacles seem. It's the story of a family business, of brothers at war with each other and at war with the world, of great rivalries, of crushing competition, and of these guys' ability to overcome all of that and create a world-beating product from very humble origins. To me, that is ultimately the story of America. We couldn't believe that this story hadn't been told because it seemed to lend itself so naturally to a kind of dramatic telling. It was one of those things where you think, this must have been done. Surely this must have been done. There's so much here. But of course, it hadn't been done. The story of Harley and the Davidsons is incredibly relevant to audiences today. It's the story of a tech startup. It's the story of a family business. It's the story of a group of brothers and friends fighting against huge odds and great competition. And it's fundamentally the story of the American dream. It's the story of a group of guys who believe in what they're doing, who work incredibly hard, innovate, and refuse to give up, and overcome great odds to create something that's a world beater.
It was our intention to do a show that was reverential, that respected the accomplishments of these three men and what they achieved and how they endured. And that was the thing that we wanted most of all to embed in the show. So we had to be very selective about what we thought were the most important elements to be absolutely, faithfully accurate about.
We went to huge efforts in terms of the research we did to try and gather as much information as possible. A huge amount of effort went into trying to source the original bikes and trying to create bikes that were true to the various different models.
This is where the Harley Museum was indispensable to us because they made available to us all the original designs and drawings. And they gave them to Alex Wheeler, who was the guy out of South Africa who was manufacturing these motorcycles. And so he was able to work off of original images, which was not just photographs, but actual plans, so we could get it right.
I think for me, the thing that really stands out when we were making the shows was the motorcycle racing. Because it was so extraordinary to see these period-accurate motorcycles racing round at great speeds around these racetracks. It was just such an amazing vision, and it looked totally of its time. And what we were very rigorous about doing was trying to ensure that all of the drama that the writers were creating was built out of historical research and historical fact. Obviously, there's a point at which you then have to take those details, the writers have to take those details and create a story that is coherent over 30 years of history.
We had to think about what was the thing that would keep the audience connected to the story. Well, what keeps them connected to the story are the setbacks and victories of these three guys in the pursuit of actualizing their dream to make this motorcycle and to keep it alive, because the competition was fierce. We brought Edsel Ford, who existed in this time, into the story because we felt that he represented the single greatest threat to the motorcycle. So we felt by bringing Ford into the story would provide a good problem for them to solve. And it would provide a fulcrum around which they could argue. It brings into play all of the questions that are asked about, what does a brand mean? What does a brand stand for? Why is a brand important?
It's very difficult to say with certainty, I know what this conversation would have been like between these two brothers at that point. And that's where the writers step in. And that's where the drama starts, because you use all of the things that you know to try and create the story that you believe is suggested by those things. What we do know from historical records is that Harley-Davidson had lots of competitors, particularly in the early days. And there was a great rivalry between Indian Motorcycles and Harley-Davidson, and that was a rivalry that went on for decades. And that was played out both in the marketplace in terms of volume of sales, and it was played out on the racetrack in terms of victories on the track.
The character that DeGray Scott plays in episode 2, he never existed. But we created a character that was intent on driving Harley-Davidson out of business. And whether or not there was actually somebody within Indian doing that at that time is questionable, but what it did was it served neatly something that was true, which is that Shrimpy Burns defected from Harley and signed up with Indian. We have it all happening before the war. It actually happened after the war. But we created a character that made it possible to include a lot of factual information that was relevant and interesting and, quite frankly, necessary in order to elevate and put the drama into relief.
What we have tried to do is get to the spirit of this competition between Harley Davidson and Indian motorcycles that was real, well documented, and obviously was a hugely motivating factor for our founders. Sometimes we compress time, sometimes we compress geography, but we're always trying to keep true to the spirit of the events. It's a great story of a family business, a business of brothers at war, technical innovation, and the ability to enforce and write their will on the world. It's very compelling.
This was a company that was based in friendship, in brotherhood, in camaraderie, in collaboration, in partnership, and that it survived. Their identity morphs. Harley's has never changed. What they stood for in 1901, 1922, and 1903 is what they stand for today, and that was, to me, a remarkable discovery.